Okay, welcome to this episode of Apparently. I record these to help other parents. I love talking to directly to other special needs parents, and that's what we have in store for you today. I've got Brian Wood from Challenger Baseball. He's out of the Mount Juliet chapter of the Challenger Baseball series. We're going to dive right into it because us special needs families don't have a lot of time for fluff. And so I will tell you that we had some technical difficulties getting Brian's camera to work. So we pulled up a picture instead. So you're going to hear his voice. His lips will not be moving because this is just a static picture. So I promise your computer's not broken. It's working. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm good. There's no AI involved in this interview at all.
Everyone's going to think this was completely AI. You're exactly
I,
right.
I'm in health IT for work, and yet I can't get my camera to work for a simple interview. So sorry about that.
No problem at all. Well, it's been a real blessing and treat to get to know you and your wife Jenny, we're diving right in. Tell us your journey with your son Addie and how that played into your life and how you became a special needs dad.
Sure. My wife Jenny and I have been married for 21 years now. We got pregnant with our daughter, our natural child, Annabeth, after 5 months of marriage. And yep, and she acts as our social media manager. I'll talk a little bit about her later, but um, and then 5 years later, my wife Jenny went through breast cancer and had some pretty extensive chemo treatments, which doctors told us would pretty much eliminate our chances of having any more children. So adoption runs in both of our families. Both of my siblings are adopted. I'm the only natural child in my family. Um, so we started talking about adoption, and God laid it on our hearts, on both of us, separately. But then we came together and talked about it on a road trip up to my parents' house one time. And so we went down that journey, and Annabeth actually said she prayed for a. This is after the fact, after we adopted our son, but she said she prayed for a special needs brother. So originally we were open to like a newborn, and then as we waited and waited, we ended up waiting for 3 years. And as we went along, we opened up our options, and we were open to different things. And our son Aditya became available, and we adopted him in 2016. And he was 4.5 years old at the time. So he does have some, or did have some abandonment and trust issues. His birth parents are very involved. We stay in contact with them. Um, when we took custody of him, they were in another state. We went there to sign the papers, take custody. We flew back to Tennessee. They came with us and stayed for about 5 days. And then when they were ready to leave, they simply left our house. He was in his bedroom in our home, and they didn't say goodbye. They just walked out, and that was the last they saw of him. So he does understandably have some trust and abandonment issues. Um, he's 4.5 and has a lot of memories. So anyway, all that said, his name is Aditya. We call him Addie for short because it's easier to say. And he is amazing. He's now 13 years old. Will be 14 in July. When we got him, like I said, he was 4.5. He turned 5 a few months later, and then he immediately started kindergarten that fall. So he was a young 5 for kindergarten. We had a challenging first couple of years of adoption. After the first year, we heard through his school from his teacher about Challenger Baseball League. That it was a baseball league designed for individuals with special needs, both kids and adults, and that they are allowed to play at their own level. There's no real expectations. None of the kids. There's no outs that they keep track of. They don't keep score. Every kid gets to hit, run the bases, play the field every inning. It's a very inclusive and fun environment for them. So we thought we'd give it a shot. And he was at that time was very reserved and kind of a little bit distant. And almost from the moment he stepped on the baseball field, he took to it and he lit up, and that really became his place. Um, and to this day, what, 8 years later, 9 years later, um, that's between church and the baseball field. Those are his two favorite places in the world. So even when he comes and hangs out when the other teams are playing and he's not even playing, he just loves to be there at the field around it. So is he a great baseball player? Nope. Um, does he put a whole lot of effort into it? Sometimes, not all the time. But he loves being there with his peers and knowing that he belongs and that he fits, and that he can just be himself whenever he's there at the ball field, and people accept him for who he is. There's no judgment and no stares, and people get him. So Addie is aware enough to know when people are looking at him funny or making fun of him, or he's aware enough to know that he's different. And so when he steps on the baseball field with challengers, he's not different. He's just like everybody else, and that's a great place for a special needs dad to have, and a family in general to have somewhere where their kids are felt are accepted for who they are, and you're around other families that get it. So that's kind of our adoption story and how we got involved. I will say that Challengers was this chapter of the Challengers was started, I think, close to 25 years ago by a gentleman, and I don't know his name offhand, but he had an autistic son himself and was looking for something to get him involved in, to get him out of the house, get him physically active outside, and he started this chapter of Challenger Baseball himself, and it's kind of grown from there. When we joined, there was a lady, great lady named Phyllis Herbert, who was the director for the kids division. And she'd been doing it for 20 plus years. She took over not long after it started. She was driving in from Spring Hill, Tennessee, all the way to Mount Juliet, which is a haul if you know where that's at.
Yes.
And she had done it for years and years and years, and had just got to the point where she was ready to pass it off. And she approached Jenny and I about taking over, and we jumped at it because we've seen what it's done for our son, and what it does for all the other kids, and it's become our passion now. I can't tell you how much enjoyment I get out of doing these things, running this league for these kids and the adults. So on the screen there, you'll see Jeff Schnelly on the right. He's director of the adult division, and he's been doing it for a long time as well. He also has an autistic son himself. His name is Brian. I think he's like 33, and he plays with adults. So Jeff is a great resource. He's been doing it a long time, and he and I partnered together. We really kind of help each other out across the kids and the adults. The adults play on Thursday nights, and our kids division plays on Saturday mornings. So we show up to each other's games and help out and just have a grand time. So, but again, I can't tell you how much joy and fun it is to really be a part of this league, and just seeing the kids' excitement and what they get out of it, and knowing that we're building. I always tell people, Challenger baseball for us is more than just baseball. We are building a community of special needs families that want an inclusive and safe environment for their kids, and that's what this is. And baseball is just our way of doing that. So that's what we're all
Well, I
about.
tell
We
you,
took over in 2020, right when COVID hit, which gave us some challenges, but we've been doing it for the last 5 years or so, and I can't love it enough.
yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, I can't tell you how much, we, other special needs parents appreciate, you and your bride, Jenny, and Jeff, stepping in. And, you and I have had this conversation before. Sometimes as a parent, we're looking for a break. We're looking for, some activities that will, take some of that pressure off. You
Yep.
decided to add more pressure to the mix. I'm not sure
Yep.
that was the wisest thing in the world, but tell us why you did it. I mean, that's I mean, sometimes as parents, we're looking for a resource. Instead, sometimes we have to go out and create it, right? We talked a little bit
Yep.
about the best heart, even though the community does great things. So definitely not taken away from anything that anybody does for any special needs family, but sometimes the heart of a special needs parent is the one closest to the cause. And so
Hmm.
talk me through that. Like, I mean, aren't you busy? Aren't you tired? How do you
Yep.
have time for this?
Yep. So both Jenny and I work full time. Fortunately, I get to work full time from home ever since COVID hit. So that's a blessing and helpful in being more uh, flexible in my schedule. We live pretty close to the ballpark, which is helpful too. But when you find something important, you make time for it, and you make it a priority. So yeah, and Addie, like I said, he's a teenager now. He's 13, going on 14. He requires a lot of care. He cannot live on his own. He cannot function in most environments on his own. Um, he he requires a lot of attention. So yeah, we're busy, but to me, Challenger baseball is almost just as much of a resource for parents and families than it is the players themselves. Because I take pride in providing an environment where families and parents feel safe with their kids, because as a special needs parent, it it feels very isolating and lonely at times, and there are periods of time where you can't get out of your house because you don't know if your child's going to melt down somewhere, or they're going to have an episode of something. Their behavior is going to be not be acceptable in the world's eyes out in the public, and so it kind of keeps you indoors sometimes and kind of secluded from the rest of the world. And so I enjoy providing this safe and inclusive space for families. Everybody that comes here has their own challenges, and everybody gets it. Like I said before, they get it. They understand. There may be kids that they get on the field that day and they're going to have a meltdown, and they got to leave immediately, or parents have to take them off the field, or they just cry for a little bit, and nobody bats an eye in our league. So this is all what we all deal with. So we're all like-minded people, and we want that a little bit of a break to have our kids have fun and be recognized. I want these kids to be seen and heard. Majority of the demographic of our players, they don't get invited to birthday parties. They're not part of special events with their typical peers. They can't play on a typical baseball team. Um, so I want them to have a place where they feel seen and special. And I tell people, and I tell our buddies, I'll get to our buddy program here in a minute, but I tell our buddies when they come out, I said, this is not about you today. This is about our kids. This is their day to feel special and recognized. And they're the rock stars. They're the sports stars out in the field. And so make them feel special. Like this is their, they're the shining star and they're in the spotlight today. So, um, and that makes parents feel great. It makes me feel great when we had Addie, when he first started, you know, he was included in things, and that's a big deal for our special needs families.
Amen. Amen. Well, yeah, you mentioned the buddies, and so as a parent of a special, you and I mean, one of the reasons why I was drawn to you immediately is we both adopted, right? So like that, we
Right.
have that connection. But parents in general of special needs children, we're a little bit hesitant sometimes, right? We like to know what to expect. We are maybe reluctant to go to places because of some of the things that you've already mentioned, meltdowns and whatever. And
Hmm.
sometimes we're asked not to come back. Now nobody ever tells us directly, "Hey, don't come back." But there's always something that comes up, right? And then there's a thing. Well, we really need to ask you to do this or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so if you're pretend like you're talking to parents all over Middle Tennessee right now, and they're saying, Brian, what would we expect? What happens when we get there? My son or my daughter, sometimes has these different problems or whatever, right? What does this look like from arrival to departure?
Sure. I would say unless your child is in immediate harm to themselves or others, we can handle just about any kind of behavior out there on the field. So um, we have we have kids with intellectual disabilities like Down syndrome, autism. Um, we have physical disabilities, spina bifida, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy. I mean, it runs the gamut. So we have wheelchairs, we have walkers out there sometimes. The cool thing is we get to partner with folks in our community and bring them on as buddy teams. So typically we'll reach out to like other typical little league teams, as well as like local businesses. Um, we've even partnered with Mount. You'll see pictures there, Mount Juliet Police Department and Fire Department. We're doing that again this year. But they come out and they are our buddies for the game. So we pair each one of them up with one of our players, and they're assigned to be with that player, help them to bat if they need to, run the bases if they need it, play in the field if they need it, whatever their need is. We ask that buddy to be there for them, and I ask them for two things when they're a buddy for our players. Number one is to keep them safe. So we take their safety very seriously. We know the kids a lot of times can't protect themselves within that space. So we ask our buddies to keep them safe, especially when they're batting in the field, to watch over them and just make sure they protect them. Number two is we ask that they be their biggest fan on the field. So lots of encouragement, lots of high fives. Great job, great hit, way to run. Make them feel like they're the only person there that's on that field that day, and that they're shining. And then again, I go back to what I tell our buddy teams: it's not about you today; it's about our players, right? This is their chance once a week to feel special and be part of a team. I always tell our buddy teams, you like being part of an organized team and having fun and winning and being a crucial part of that. Well, these kids do too. They just have more challenges ahead of them. So we'll partner with local Little League teams. We partner with Pinnacle Bank, brings a group of their employees out every year and buddies with us. 2 years ago, when the Nolensville Little League team went to the World Series, we have one of our players actually has a cousin on that team, and so we had a contact, and they reached out and they were buddies with us for a game. So we had the famous Nolensville Little League team come out, and they ate it up. And 9 times out of 10, well, pretty much all the time, our buddies get just as much out of it as our players do. It's a chance to have visibility of kids that are different in their world that they don't always recognize. So our typical peers get a chance to interact and see that, hey, these kids are just like me. They just have bigger mountains to climb every day to get to do the same things I get to do. So again, it's a special time, and our players love their buddies. They remember them every year. They'll ask for certain players that they want to be buddies with again the following season. And I've had multiple teams. I can't tell you how many times our buddy teams come to us and say, "Hey, when's season start? What week can we sign up for? When can we do this?" Because they love that time, and they're giving up their time. It's typically on a Saturday when they're on their off week, because they're in the middle of their seasons too, right? And so they'll take their personal time. They're already busy enough as it is. We know how busy Little League teams are and travel teams, but they give their personal time and volunteer and come out and do this with us, and always with a smile on the face. They always walk away really happy and having a lot of fun. So it's a good time on the field.
You hit the nail on the head when it comes to buddies. Obviously, well, not obviously, but you and I both hold our faith, very dear, right? And so,
Yes.
that's where, the Lord gives us these children, and it's a calling and a blessing, and that's what we forget, right? Is that these buddies and when the police department or the fire department, some people look at that as, oh, it's a task, it's maybe even a burden to volunteer, and whatever else. There's other things I could be doing with my Saturday morning, and the beauty of it is the buddy walks away with the blessing as well. And so
Yep. Absolutely.
that's the part that so many people miss in the world of special needs, is our
Mm-hmm.
children are here, for that blessing on other people, right? So
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so I mean, this thing is free, right?
It
How in the
is.
how'd you pull that off? And then what happens? What happens if somebody watching this video is lives in Franklin? I mean, Mount Juliet. That's a long drive, for
Yep.
an hour baseball game or something. What else you got out there?
So we're pretty fortunate. We partnered with the Mount Juliet. They're not called the Mount Juliet Little League anymore, but that's what they are essentially. Um, and they played their games on Lebanon Road in Mount Juliet, and they give us space. They give us a field to use, field number 3, for all of our games. They also help support us financially. Um, they budget us in their yearly budget to help pay for our uniforms. All of our equipment is donated, so all the bats, gloves, helmets, all that stuff is all donated. Um, and we have some pretty nice equipment actually. Some of these little league teams donate things that they haven't even touched yet, and they're several $100 bats. And so, um, but we have sponsors which are listed on our website as well. So I went to a little over a year ago, I went to one of the financial meetings for the league, and they just talked about how they budget in, a certain amount of money for challengers every year. And I appreciated that, but I wanted to also kind of see about where we could kind of not necessarily earn our keep, but help contribute towards that, not be such a burden on the league, even though they don't see it that way. And so I've reached out to, started putting it out there that, hey, we can take donations. That'll help us keep this free for our families. So we've had several local businesses and folks in the community that have donated, and those are all on our website. But I know we have, just to name a few, Southeastern Tank, TriStar Volleyball, um, Knights of Columbus does a yearly fundraiser for us that brings in a lot of money, and then they also one night every year during the season they'll come out and they'll do a cookout, hamburgers and hot dogs and chips and cookies and drinks for all of our families. And they do that on their own. They pay for it, they provide it, and they cook it out. And so we have a lot of great contacts and relationships within the community that help us out. That helps us keep this free. So that's the main thing. As special needs families, we tend to incur a lot of extra costs that other families may not, with therapies and other insurance and that sort of thing. So to add on another cost of having their kids play ball is something we want to try to avoid. And so we're fortunate to partner with the Mount Juliet Little League and others to support this league and help keep it free for our families. 2 years ago, we had a family that played in our league. They were brand new, but we found out they were driving all the way up from Franklin every Saturday. And towards the end of the season, they came to us and said, "Hey, we're interested in maybe starting our own Challenger League closer to us, so we don't have to make that drive." They loved it so much. They saw the impact that had on our community and the families that are involved. They wanted to do something like that local with them, and that was towards the end of the spring season. And her name is Kayla. She took the initiative, and by that fall, they had started a league in Franklin, and they partnered with the Franklin Baseball Club, and they have the same kind of setup where they provide them with a field. They help with uniforms, equipment, and they keep it free for their families as well. So, so there is a chapter in Franklin for those that are closer to that area. I know there's one in West Nashville as well. I don't exactly know where they're located, but I've heard rumblings about them in West Nashville. So I know there's at least 3 of us in the local greater Nashville area. So if Mount Juliet or Wilson County doesn't work for you, there are other options available.
Awesome. And what I hear you saying is that there could be some parents that watch this and want to start something in their community, right? And so they could
Mm-hmm.
reach out to you and you could help point them in the right direction if that was the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, like you said earlier, it's on us to take the initiative, right?
Yeah.
So especially when you're starting something new. So
Yeah.
when I talk about Kayla and Franklin, there was nothing there. They kind of built that from scratch. They took the initiative to approach the Franklin Baseball Club and say, "Hey, here's what they're doing out in Mount Juliet. they've been doing it for years. Here's the impact they have on their community. We want to do that locally in our area for families, and there's a need for it. You don't realize um, how many special needs families are in your area, because again, they're kind of isolated a lot of the times, right?
Yeah.
They maybe go to school, but there's not a whole lot of options, especially sports wise, for them in their local communities. So you may not necessarily see them out and about a lot. And so this is a great resource, something to create, again, a safe and inclusive environment, building a community for the special needs families. We, even outside the ball field, I make sure our families stay in touch with each other. We've got an email group um, that we put together, and we have families that, hey, they'll come to us, to me or somebody else, and they'll say, hey, we're hit some hard times, we're struggling. Can you help us or put the word out there that we need this or that? And a lot of times, there are other families step up and help come through for them, because they understand there are times when you need your community, right? Um, and so it's nice to have other families that are just like you step in and fill in the gap for you. And we set up, a lot of our players have and our families have bonded and created friendships, and now they have play dates with their kids that they wouldn't have before. So there's options now, and there's things to do, and it's all about building your world around you. And um, we I know you mentioned earlier about registration and wanting to play with us. If
Yeah,
there's parents that are seeing that.
so I'll point out one thing, because this is probably the single most question I ever get when I'm talking to a parent. And so
Yep.
you've laid it out right here. Ages 5 to 100, right?
Yep. Yep.
Now let me ask you. So I got to ask, because someone's going to ask me or someone's going to comment somewhere, right? What if my son or daughter is 4.5?
Typically, we'll ask that they turn 5 sometime during the season.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Someone's going to ask, so I wanted to at least
Oh,
throw it
sure, I know.
out.
I get it. I get it quite a bit, actually.
Okay,
Prefer that
so
they're already 5, but if they turn 5 during the season,
there you
we'll
go.
make some
So if they turn
accommodations.
5 during the season, you're probably not checking birth certificates. You're probably not
No,
like, we're not calling the government or anything like that, right?
no,
Okay.
and we're not asking for any diagnosis. We're
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So
So
we're
let's
taking
talk
parents'
through
word
the
for it.
registration process. So right here, you click this button that says registration, or
So
register here, and it's closed right now, right? Because
it is
I mean, the season at the time of this recording, the season is starting in, sorry,
Saturday.
3 days. I mean, you got a little thing right here that says 3 days.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
normally right here, there's a button and they click it and they register. Talk us through that.
Yeah, we'll open that form back up for the spring and fall seasons. Um, we do close registration at a certain point, just so we have a number of players so we can order our uniforms, right?
Yep.
But we're not trying to turn anybody away. So I've already had 3 players added to our league since registration closed, and we purposely order extra uniforms every year to accommodate for people that hear about it late or just miss the deadline. They want to play. So again, I never want to turn anybody away if at all possible. So like you said earlier, they may not have the same uniform as the other kids do, but we'll have something available for them, and we want them to be able to join us and be a part of it. So again, registration will open back up for the fall, probably around August or so, and then for the spring season, we open it usually up after the first of the year in January. But if
So
you want to play, still you can. You're right on the right page right there for the contact us page.
perfect.
If they have any questions, they can fill out that, and it sends an email directly to myself, and I will get some information from them and get them set up.
So right now, when it's closed, this is the registration process, right?
Correct.
Send an
Yep.
email to you, and you're going to get them in there. Their uniform might be a different color, but they're going to get one, and we'll
Right.
figure it out, right?
Right.
Let me tell you, my son, as you know, we came squealing in to get his uniform this past weekend, but he has been carrying his uniform around the house, showing people. He's super excited.
Cool.
We're ready for that to start this coming Saturday, and just the joy he gets from seeing a hat and a shirt. And I mean, it's amazing that all this is free. I'm still blown away by that. So,
Yeah.
as we wrap up, anything, anything burning desire that you want to share? I mean, it's a blessing to have this in our community. I mean, I know that, I certainly am grateful for, for you and your wife. And of course, I don't, I'm not participating in the adult side of it, but Jeff as well. And we'll certainly share this with, people, parents of adults and children will see this. So,
Sure.
they may connect with Jeff, but anything in closing, anything to wrap up, just again, thank you. Anything you want to share, as we say goodbye for this episode and just sort of wrap it up.
Now, Scott, I just appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and to highlight our league. It's something that we're doing. We're just being vessels and being used because we've been called to do something like this. Um, and I hope people will take advantage of the resource. Um, like we talked about, there tends to be not a whole lot of options for families of special needs kids and adults, and caregivers typically feel very isolated and alone. Feel like there's nothing available for them. So this is a resource for them, and I hope they'll take advantage of it. And again, we start at age 5 and we go all the way up through whenever they can't play anymore. I think Jeff had a 74-year-old this past season playing
Awesome. Awesome.
because people sometimes forget special needs kids turn into special needs adults, right?
Yep.
And they still need, options for them as well. They need things to do and being able to engage, and it's good for them socially. A lot of our kids really have trouble socializing, and communicating. And this, we found with Addie, it opened up his speech and his language a lot, because he would start talking about baseball and how excited he was, and he could start naming off all of his friends on his team. And
It's these guys right here, huh?
yep, that's my son right there, and that's me on the right. So he's taller than me
Taller
now.
than you already.
Yep, he's way taller than me now. But and then this past year we started putting their names on the uniforms so that people can cheer. They know who's coming up. We love crowds, by the way. We love our fans. So even if you don't have a kid that is playing, you may know of one, or you may just want to come out and support us and just cheer them on. They eat that up. They love it.
Yeah.
And so now the fans can cheer them on by their name. They see it on the back of their jersey. They can chant their name. We're going to have some music playing. We'll have our walk-up songs this year. We typically highlight different players on different weeks, with a fun fact or something special that their family wants the community to know about their kid. So we got a lot of fun things planned this season. Like I said, we got the Mount Juliet Police and Fire Department joining us. We're going to honor our mothers and caregivers around the Mother's Day weekend. We'll have our cookout one year, and then at the end of the season every year in spring, we do our spring picnic. It's usually about a week after the season ends, and we meet over at Charlie Daniels Park, and we have the kids and the adults all join together. So, gosh, there's over 100 people there usually, and we provide pizza and cookies and drinks, and we have trophies for everybody, and we recognize them and just talk about what a great season it was, and it's just a good time to spend quality time with other families that are just like you.
Well, you mentioned bringing the fans, and I forgot about that piece of it. So we should share this with everybody and have, folks come in and cheer. And of course, when you look at where the ballpark is in proximity to a lot of the favorite restaurants, so you can always come and, cheer the kids on and then go grab a good bite to eat or a hot cup of coffee or something like that right there in the Mount Juliet area.
We
And
do that quite a bit. Yep.
yeah, what a blessing it is to have all the people sponsor this to keep it free. So I mean, I just don't see a downside, man. This is a great opportunity for families to get plugged in. So,
Well, thank you.
Brian, thanks for your time today. Thanks for what you and your wife and your daughter, do for Challenger Baseball in Mount Juliet. And let's just put this out there to some parents and see if we can't get some more families involved.
Yes, absolutely. Go to our website with any questions or to help socialize it and get it out there and get the word out.
Awesome. Thanks again for your time, man.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.